put. Oh.
We're going live right now. All right, we're online and we are recording. So, Jessica, today is the second day of Christmas, and this is also known as St. Stephen's Day. So, good King Wenceslas went out on the feast of Stephen, and the snow lay round about, deep and crisp and even. Brightly shone the stars that night, though the wind was cruel, when a poor man came in sight, gathering winter fuel. Okay.
Sing it, son.
we now know it is the feast of Stephen, and that good King Wenceslas. I was thinking about that I won't sing the whole song, as it's like 5 verses, but he just invites this poor man. He meets this poor man who's out there collecting firewood, I guess, winter fuel, and instead of being an asshole king and saying, "What are you doing on my land collecting wood? Get out of here." Instead of doing that, he asks his esquire or his page or something. He asks, "Yonder peasant, who and he? What his dwelling?" He asks, who is this guy and what's he doing? And then he feeds him and spends all that kind of partying with him, I guess. And that's the end of the song. And it's like, okay, he's so great because he was nice to a poor man. But if you think about it, there was no long-term planning in that.
Was there alcohol involved?
Probably. I mean, they shared drink, and basically
does it every time.
The heat from his soul, though, melted the snow. I mean, that's part of it, part of the legend, part of the song, anyhow. But I mean, if you were a poor man and you met the king, wouldn't you be hoping for more than one night of sort of relaxation? I mean, wouldn't you say, "Hey, I got these kids, they need to go to school, they need their COVID vaccinations or something"?
Isn't that welfare?
Well, I mean, I'm just wondering, what is a king's duty to the people?
I don't really know of any. I don't think they have a duty to the people, do they?
Well, shouldn't they?
What about King Ralph Northam of Virginia, the governor of Virginia, who brags?
Actually, that's a good lead-in to the topic here tonight, which is history. Does a king or a governor or any sort of executive, does he have a responsibility to maintain the history, heritage, and identity of his kingdom? Because otherwise, what is he king of? If the governor of Virginia doesn't feel a connection with, what is it now, 415 years of governors before him. Think about that. 415 years since Jamestown was founded, and that is the history of white European Virginia.
And he will go down as the worst governor that we've ever had in history. Old blackface. And to me and others, we have kind of contemplated on this a little bit. It almost seems like it was all planned. The whole blackface scandal, the little picture that he had in college or whatever it was, and then all of a sudden he just blames the Confederacy for killing all this racism, and that the Confederacy must be erased because it killed George Floyd. So
I didn't know that the Confederate troops ever occupied Minneapolis. When did that happen?
I didn't either.
I mean,
I didn't either. I
mean, that's almost the Canadian border. If we had gotten that far north, wouldn't we have de facto won the war? Wouldn't it have been just a total revolution instead of a war between the states? I mean, if we had taken over Minnesota, I think they would have lost, don't you?
Well, I think, it just seems like, wait a minute here. It was the Confederate flag who walked into the church in Charleston, South Carolina, too. It was almost like everyone who honored their Southern ancestry walked in there and helped him load that gun. And every one of us all had our finger on the trigger, supposedly, during the so-called, I'm not really sure what to believe at this point, but I guess I won't be cold-hearted to it. But supposedly when the church shooting happened.
You won't be what?
What?
I think you said you won't be something or other. I didn't understand what you're saying.
Well, I won't be, I guess, evil about it. Saying
as evil as you want, you're a white devil, and we love you.
Oh, shucks. But no, I mean, it seems like it was all planned, that as well. And then, you look at all the pictures of Dylan Roof and the flag, the little bitty little stick flag that caused all the controversy. And again, it was all planned. It was a way to start the removal of our memorials to our dead.
Oh, I think you're right. I mean, he had, I believe, a Confederate flag, he had a Rhodesian flag, and a South African flag.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, as I understand it, most of his friends on Facebook were black or something. He didn't really have much of a track record as a nationalist or a racist or anything. I mean, we both know a 17-year-old who's very active in this and is developing quite a record, but Dylan Roof had none. Dylan Roof had, I mean, for one thing, is that even a real name? I keep wondering about that. Dylan Storm Roof. I mean, who names their kid that?
Yeah, well, again, it was just almost like I said, we all went down there together and we helped him chamber the rounds and we all helped him pull the trigger. But and then just like fentanyl Floyd, it wasn't the fentanyl that he ingested on his own. We did it. We helped him do that. We were
Let's stay on the African Methodist Episcopal Church shooting for a minute, because the big difference about that is how many people were there?
Was it like 8 or 9 or something like that?
Were they all crippled?
No.
Why didn't they try to disarm him?
I have no idea.
Why didn't they have cell phones?
Why wasn't any of them armed?
Now that, you see, that part of it seems, supposedly Hillary Clinton talked to those people, one of those people at least earlier in that day. Isn't that a strange coincidence?
Yeah, well, pretty much all that kind of stuff is a strange coincidence. Just like back in 2017, right after we had Charlottesville, Unite the Right, we went down to Tennessee and we had a White Lives Matter rally. And the reason why, of course, you had all of the Somalian immigrants coming into the state and taking all the jobs away from the white people. And I mean, this is rural, in the middle of nowhere, Tennessee. Yeah, it's south of Nashville, but still it was rural enough that the people knew each other. And, you had all these Somalians that were enforced into the state, regardless of the people wanted them or not. And then you had this Somalian immigrant that walked into a white church in Antioch, Tennessee. And he went in there and he shot up a bunch of people in there. And then one of the guys from the back, who was a young kid, he got pistol whipped by the guy's gun. And I'm not really sure how many people actually were killed there, but the media doesn't cover that one. And then after he left out of the church, he went outside and there was another lady that was walking into the church, and he went over and point blank and shot her, and then stood over her and shot her in the head, point blank range. One of the guys. But none of that is brought out. The media doesn't cover that kind of stuff. Just like the instance with the cop here recently, that woman cop up there in Minnesota. She basically had the book thrown at her. They also said that she had a right to use deadly force against this guy who tried to run over the police. But of course, now they're going to get her and take most of her life away because she shot a guy that was in a deadly weapon, a car. But there was also another instance where there was this lady up there. She called the police, and this police officer, which was a black immigrant, I'm not sure if it was Somalian or not. I forget his ethnic background, but basically, with that being said, nothing happened to the black police officer there. But of course, we've got the one with Fentanyl Floyd, and now this newest one, of course, all white officers against black people. So of course, the roles are reversed. In every aspect, it seems like all white people are losing. What are you looking at here?
Well, I'm looking. This is I actually didn't know anything about the Antioch shooting, so I wanted to bring it up because I'm not sure how many other people have heard about it. You said you went to Pennsylvania, to Tennessee after this. Tennessee.
Went to Charlottesville after the Unite the Right in August of 2017. In October of 2017, we went to near Antioch, Tennessee.
This was in September. This shooting was September 24th, 2017, 11 a.m. White American churchgoers. The Burnett Chapel shooting was a mass shooting that occurred on September 24th, 2017, when a gunman opened fire in the Burnett Chapel Church of Christ in Antioch, Tennessee, part of the greater Nashville area, killing one person and injuring 6 others. The perpetrator was identified as Emmanuel Kidega Samson, a 25-year-old native of Sudan. Samson was arrested after getting into an altercation with a bystander and charged with first-degree murder and 43 other charges. The suspect indicated that the attack was revenge for the 2015 Charleston church shooting. I have never heard of this. I didn't even know this had happened. So thank you.
See, all of that again, it's all swept under the rug, and obviously as a revenge killing. White America doesn't hear about this kind of thing, and so all they want to do is feel sorry for the black victims, but they never feel sorry for the white victims because they're never heard about. So that's what we tried to do that day when we did the White Lives Matter rally, is we wanted to have a candlelight vigil for the victim of this shooting. And you notice that they don't say, like they do in all the other shootings, racist white man or racist white woman kills innocent black, whatever. And then, of course, in this particular situation, just as you read, they didn't explain that it was a black shooter, that they just said his name, correct?
No, it says he's from Sudan. He's Sudanese. It's very clear. And it says that it's a review of Samson's Facebook page by the Southern Poverty Law Center, SPLC, found sympathies and interests to black supremacist figures like the new Black Panther Party and the Nation of Islam, as well as an affinity for conspiracy theories. In the days leading up to the shooting, he posted several cryptic messages on his Facebook page. Sampson had 2 domestic disputes with his girlfriend in Murfreesboro in January and February earlier that year, but was not arrested. 3 months earlier, he was reportedly told his father that he was about to commit suicide, which prompted a police response. Sampson was charged with first-degree murder. Subsequent to the hearing, in a police interview, Sampson suggested he was hearing voices and had a vision of the Burnett Chapel Church. A psychiatrist testified in April 2019 that Sampson suffered from schizoaffective disorder bipolar type. Sampson was scheduled to appear in Davidson County General Sessions Court on September 27th and is being held at a county jail without bond. He allegedly had additional weapons in his vehicle, as well as a note that referenced the Charleston shooting of 2015, in which a white supremacist murdered 9 African Americans. The prosecution later claimed that Sampson had hoped to kill at least 10 white people in the shooting as revenge for the Charleston church shooting. On October 8th, it was reported that a preliminary hearing had been held, set for October 23rd. Trial, Sampson was indicted on 43 charges, including first-degree murder and aggravated assault. Emmanuel Kidiga Sampson is currently incarcerated at the Riverbend Maximum Security Institution.
So you said it yourself. When they describe Dylan Roof, they describe him as a hoodoo white supremacist. But when they describe him as a, just a Sudanese, they don't describe him as obviously affiliations or ties with the black supremacist narrative.
Well, they did. They said that the SPLC links him to the new Black Panther Party.
Yeah, no, above. The very top up there, they don't call him a black supremacist. The very top, when he started reading it, they did not refer to him as a black supremacist.
No, it apparently was classified as a hate crime, though, for what it's worth.
Yeah, but again,
But I mean,
everyone heard about.
The interesting thing is that I've never heard of it, and it's not like I'm not interested.
Yeah.
That's just amazing. Right. I've never heard of this.
And so you have all of the murders of white people. I mean, you got the murder. There's a recent one, the revenge of the Kyle Rittenhouse thing, the black supremacist that drives his car into the parade of white people. And then he goes on a route to make sure that he runs over the most people in his rampage. But again, they do not refer to him as a black supremacist. So that's where we are today. I mean, everything is so backwards. And
this is all interesting, but I'm glad you pointed this out to me because I had never heard of it before. But we were gonna talk about erasing history, and I guess this is kind of erased history, isn't it? Because it's
it is never recovered. So if it's something that we do today, we kind of bring out these people because they had names too and they had families. So, and the particular person that was killed there, I mean, she was just wanting to go to church. And I mean, everybody wants to talk about white supremacy, black supremacy. It should be an issue of the church. They were petitioners to the church trying to, give right to God. And that night, they killed Christians. So that's what we should be more mad about. But you don't hear about that sector of, nobody wants to talk about that particular fact of any of this stuff, the fact that they were Christians.
Well, I mean, that's the same is true of the people at African Methodist Episcopal, I guess. And in Charleston, I assume they were Christians with the African Methodist Episcopal Church. I mean, it's so symbolic, the choice of that place, because I believe that that's the oldest African Methodist Episcopal church in the United States. And that's a very major and very conservative branch of African American Christianity. So, I mean, they carefully chose that to be in a very, it's just sort of incredible that there was not a fight at AME Charleston. I mean, 8 people, even older people, made no effort to disarm somebody who sat down and basically was at the table telling him he was going to kill him.
Yeah, and there's a whole lot of things to that shooting that doesn't make any sense. But then, like I said, it all fell on the shoulders of all pro-Confederate groups. You know, we had, of course, the removal of the monument from Nikki Haley, or no, excuse me, the flags, but from, you know, basically desecrating our memorial to our dead. And then, of course, it was like a snowball effect after that. You know, going all the way from Kentucky, you know, down to Louisiana and you know, Texas, and yeah,
Texas and Florida, everywhere.
I mean, yes, and so for some odd reason, we were all you know, netted into this whole situation that occurred. But again, it just feels like it's planned. I know that the whole reason that, you know, the great blackface Northam, you know, he blames us for the crimes that are in Richmond, Virginia right now. So you mean to tell me, after we take down our beautiful memorials to our generals, you know, the men that will always be you know, great and honorable, versus Ralph Northam. So he blames our Confederate heroes for the crimes. You know, okay, so how do we? Okay, so now that the monuments are down, then how come the crime has actually surged higher now? You know, the break-ins, the robberies, the murders. I mean, it's like a daily occurrence. So when those monuments came down, wasn't the crime supposed to stop?
Well, I mean, they've made the same observation here in New Orleans, that the removal of the monuments did not make anyone happier, black or white. And it didn't increase the safety of the city. It did not increase the quality of the streets. It was an attack on image and ideology. And the reason I wanted to talk about that today was because it's all been very quiet, but there's an attempt to erase history that's going on in New Orleans. And 2 of the places I spent my Sunday are about that. The Benthuizen Elms Mansion. Let's just read this. It's a very plain vanilla kind of thing. Originally the Garden District Association. Garden District is the best part of New Orleans. You know, I'm right at the edge of it. Garden District Association, Van Benthuizen Elms Mansion, originally part of the Livaday plantation. I knew Marcel Livaday. He was a federal judge down here back in the 90s, which sold to developers in 1832. The earliest recorded for the transaction for this parcel was in 1836. Wealthy and prominent real estate speculator and free person of color, Bernard Sully, purchased the majority of the square. In 1869, this grand home was built for New York-born merchant and president of the Crescent City Railroad. That's the St. Charles trolley now that goes in front of it. Watson Van Benthuizen, attributed to the famed architect Louis Reynolds, no one has ever heard of. It was originally built as a raised center hall in Greek Revival style. Significant additions in the Italianate style were made in the 1880s. 1906, the front facade was partly enclosed. The interior is adorned with solid mahogany woodwork, a stunning circular staircase, imported marble mantels, and ornate plasterwork. The Van Benthuizen family retained ownership until 1943. In 1951, it was purchased by John Elms Sr., owner of the Tack Amusement Company. The home was restored by the Elms family in the early 1980s. Under the Elms family stewardship, the house retained its original elegance. Are you asleep yet?
No.
Well, why not? Because that's pretty boring. Now, let's compare that to the text that is still on their website that used to be the historical marker. This is a brand new historical marker. I'm guessing this is not more than, it might be 3 months old, but I haven't taken the time yet to dig through, but I know I took pictures of the old sign as recently as last summer, because I always do that. But here's the other history. No, this is, yes, okay, here we go. The beginning. The mansion was built in 1869 for Yankee in Gray, Watson Van Benthuizen II, Confederate States of America. Born in New York in the early 1830s, Watson moved to New Orleans in the 1840s. When the Civil War started, Watson became an officer in the Confederate Army. A relative of Jefferson Davis by marriage, Van Benthuizen was the quartermaster of the presidential convoy that fled Richmond in 1865. After the war, he became a prominent New Orleans businessman, a wine and tobacco merchant, and the president of the St. Charles Streetcar Company. Van Benthuizen died in his home in 1901. From 1931 until the start of World War II, the house served as the German consulate. From the cellar, Consul General Baron Spiegel von den Peckelsheim, novelist and former World War I U-boat captain, informed the U-boats in the Gulf of Mexico of ship departures from New Orleans docks. In 1962, John Elms Sr., owner of the largest coin-operated amusement company in the South, purchased the home. Shortly after Mr. Elms' death in 1968, the family started using the house for private functions and is today operated by the third generation of the Elms family. Now, which is more interesting?
Well, and then you said there was also a what was it, a home down there that was changed, or no, it's off limits to tourists now that the one lady was afraid that.
Oh, that's the house where Jefferson Davis died.
Yeah.
Jefferson Davis died in New Orleans. President of the Confederate States of America died in 1889, I believe. And there used to be two monuments in front of the house on First Street. It's a beautiful, large old mansion. And I've been to parties there. Monumental Task Committee had a party there just a couple of years ago. That was an organization dedicated to preservation of New Orleans monuments, MTC. And anyhow, they haven't removed those monuments from the house. It's a private residence. It's not a museum, and they haven't removed it. But they've like created a coffin for it's kind of like a gravestone. What they've got, it's called a stela, like a funerary stela in front of the mansion that talks about his death and his service in the Mexican War and as United States Secretary of War and in the Senate and as President of the Confederate States of America. And then there was another plaque by the UDC on the fence, the wall actually, and those are covered up. They're still there, but they are covered up like a matter of shame or something. And that's down on First Street near between Magazine and Camp. And the Van Peckelsheim Benthuizen House, that's on St. Charles, just St. Charles and 8th Street, actually. Where'd you go?
I wanted to show you, talk about shame, right? So, I'm a UDC member. So anyway, they cover everything up, regardless of, just like in the majority of the monuments, right? Most of the people that are around the monuments actually vote to keep the monuments. I mean, it's, I've noticed a bunch of the monuments that came down to Virginia and even North Carolina, the people themselves have voted to keep them, right? And then, of course, you have the big government coming in and saying, well, we're going to take it down anyway. So they do. And then they took our tags away. We had the license plate that had the SCV symbol on it. And I think they're doing it in other states now. They're taking away the SCV tags. And of course, they did it in Virginia a few years ago. So now the UDC, well, the SCV did it. Let me make sure my address is covered. But anyway, I worked on my truck today. That's why. But anyway, so the SCV started out, these are our periodicals, right? And so they, you're thinking like there's probably a Playboy or Playgirl magazine in here. No, that they're so ashamed of our history. They now have to enclose them in paper, almost, or actually packaging, to keep people from being able to see the contents of our magazines now.
Wow.
And it's really, really messed up.
That's not exactly the Daily Stormer, is it?
Yeah, and like I said, it's not Playboy or Playgirl. I mean, it would be different if it was like Swinging Meat in here, but it's not. This is a UDC magazine. It has our monuments on it. We wouldn't want it to offend anyone at the mail service. Just like the monuments that were on Monument Avenue for 130 some years or whatever, and it hasn't offended anyone. It has, but they didn't know the correct history. When our ancestors, they gave their sons to die, it was not to keep a pet or a slave, but instead it was to fight against an invader, a mercenary whose ultimate goal was to destroy the people of our great state, Virginia, and then all those southern states. They didn't come up here to shake our hand, obviously. So obviously with the monuments being taken down, they do not have any factual, whatever SPLC, the ADL, the NAACP, and all of these supposed historical organizations are doing. They're just putting this Band-Aid on it. It's all about slavery. But it's just really disturbing that the UDC and the SCV are conforming. They are, it's like their lights are going out. They don't fight anymore. And it's just, it almost makes me not want to be a member anymore, really, because these monuments are being taken down, mainly because the SPLC has went out and put this thing on their website talking about where the monuments are, where they're located, and which ones have been removed and which ones are pending removal. They're actually creating this.
It's a hit list.
Huh?
It's a hit list.
Yes, basically. And they're talking about we're supposed to remove our monuments, and then they're going to turn around and put their monuments in our monuments place, just like they did the Charlottesville Memorial. I read, which I haven't confirmed, but more than likely it's true, but they had already disassembled General Lee in Charlottesville to be melted down to turn into some public art, probably some in the form of Martin Luther King. King. So
I like raccoons myself. I don't consider that. I like raccoons myself. I don't consider that an insult. Raccoons are very intelligent animals.
Yeah, maybe the four-legged. But
when I lived in the Texas Hill Country, I used to feed raccoons every night. I'd get as many as 30 or 40 of them out there.
Oh man, but yeah, it's just really disturbing. I mean, and a lot of the times when they're taking down their monuments, I know when they took our third national flag down in the last capital of the Confederacy in Danville. I remember before they ever even voted on it, they already had the cherry picker outside and obviously in position to take down the flag off of the pole. And I remember, I wasn't there, of course, but all my other friends were there. And it's like the sky just, let go and it just started pouring down rain. And the same thing with Pittsburgh, when they took down the monument.
Are you saying that? Are you saying the scene like happened at the crucifixion took place?
Yeah, I mean, definitely.
The heavens were rent.
Yes, I mean, I truly think that. Yes, because I mean, Pittsburgh, the same thing. They got it all the way down, and as soon as they removed it, it's like the heavens just released, all the rain. It's pretty crazy.
I don't think you ever mentioned that to me before. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah, no. But again, it doesn't matter what the people say if they want the monuments and they want to keep the monuments. Even the people that look at them every day, the people who were living on Monument Avenue, they voted to keep the monuments, and now they are. Now it looks like a plain shithole. I mean, it's just there's nothing there. It's all graffiti everywhere. I mean, those people would probably have to give away their homes at this point because it's nothing spectacular about that road anymore. I mean, where are they going to put some kind of crappy art? And the really odd thing about it is, so there's a museum in Richmond, Virginia, and it used to be the old Confederates' home, basically, because, when the Confederates came back, the mass majority of their families were dead, or for whatever reason, if they were attacked directly.
Or the homes were burnt.
Huh?
Or the homes were burnt.
Yeah, so they basically came back home to nothing. They didn't have homes to go to. They didn't have families anymore, so they were basically on their own. So they made this veterans home in Richmond, Virginia, and then there was a chapel back in the back where all the the Confederates went to church every day, and there was flags up there, and there's a cannon out there. And anyway, they took the home basically and turned it into a museum. And then the real funny thing about it is on the same property, the UDC's building, the United Daughters of the Confederacy building, the main headquarters is there right beside this museum. Well, now they have taken all the memorabilia from the Confederacy out of the museum. Then they say that you're not allowed on the property where the chapel used to be, where it had the flags. You cannot carry a flag to the Confederate chapel. And then they
is it no longer in the same ownership, or who took it over?
I'm not really sure who took it over, but I know if you walk onto the property with a Confederate flag, you have people jumping out of the bushes after you. Been there, done that. But the funny thing about it is
doing what?
Oh, flagging. We usually
no, but they jump out of the bushes and they do what?
start yelling at you, saying they're going to have you arrested for coming on the property with that racist flag, which is a Christian symbol, but But the Virginia flaggers, they used to go out and flag in front of that museum just because of what they did, just to spite. But now, our monuments obviously came down. But before our monuments came down, they put up another memorial that has no meaning. They basically they used General Stuart's horse, because they can't make stuff up on their own. They have to use our stuff. So they used the complete likeness of this horse of Stuart's. And then they put a black thug, a gangbanger, as we call it in the Confederate community. He's wearing, the Nike shoes or whatever. It's got the dreadlocks in the hair. We think it's like a transsexual or something like that, because when you look at the picture of this monument, and it's and whatever it is, maybe the image of Predator. You remember that movie Predator that had Arnold Schwarzenegger in it? And he's looking backwards, and then it says in the pedestal where this is on, it says rumors of war. But it's funny how then our memorials get removed, but this rumors of war is still present. Not on, in front of this museum, but instead in between the museum and the UDC building. So then, of course, they had the Fentanyl Floyd riots. And then, of course, one of the gangbangers of Richmond, the didn't do nothings, whenever they took a Molotov cocktail and threw it through the window of the UDC building. They have facial recognition of who did this. They know who did it. But are they arrested for doing this? For vandalism? No. And then, of course, they had this, this Arthur Ashe monument over there on Monument Avenue. Yeah, we had these great generals, these great heroes, Jefferson Davis. Huh?
I remember when they put that up. Are you having trouble hearing me?
Well, no, you're talking when I'm talking, so. But anyway, they put Arthur Ashe up. And somebody, which you know how it always goes, when the Jews, they have their synagogues vandalized, it's usually a Jewish person that does it, or even like in a black community, you might have some kind of black, like swastika. You might have a swastika painted on somebody's house, and they're like, well, it's a hate crime, and they kind of find out it's actually them that did it. Well, I'm thinking that this is probably the Arthur Ashe scenario too. They went and vandalized it. And so now Ralph Northam and Mayor Stoney is out there saying, we're going to go to the ends of the earth and we're going to find out who did this and we're going to charge them with a felony. But you do remember what they did to our monuments, right? So it's just kind of ironic how everything is going down. When they put up these monuments, these public art, as they want to call it, out in Charlottesville to replace our monument, how are we supposed to react?
Well, never mind reaction. What is the goal? Because I think that the emotional reaction is one thing, and it could be described as intentional degradation, sort of a form of psychological warfare to depress people. But what's their ultimate goal? What does it mean to erase history? I mean, if I were trying to promote a property, I'm going to go back to this place in Louisiana on St. Charles Avenue for a minute. Those two histories, the one that has Jefferson Davis and the German consul of the Third Reich and the communicating with U-boats. That is just like the beginning of a novel or a movie or something, right? Or maybe two novels that could be two novels, two major movies that could be made about that house. And the history that they've got up there now is just nothing. It's boring. It's it's only of interest if you're like really into late 19th century houses or something. But it's not the living, vital history of war. That house was basically a house where real history was happening and made, and the new revision of it is so stiff, and it doesn't give you any of the context. It doesn't tell you any of the meaning and the real identity of the owners, because the real identity, what they would tell you if they were alive, was what was written on the old one. About their involvement in great historical events. And who cares? Who wants to walk along the side of a street and see that they've got an expensive circular stairway? I mean, that's really gripping information, isn't it? I mean, rich people have fancy stairways. Wow, I didn't know that. I'm so excited for them. They have mahogany and marble inside. Wow, no other rich houses have that. And so the point is that the pivotal place of New Orleans, particularly St. Charles Avenue, in these moments of history. I mean, like I said, I have never not been able to confirm this, but my great grandfather was a Louisiana lawyer and judge who spoke German, and he met that German consul and introduced him to Huey Long during the Third Reich, and the Third Reich was interested in supporting Huey Long because he was the closest to a National Socialist of any politician in the United States, except for maybe Charles Coughlin, but Coughlin never ran for office. Huey Long was actually first governor of Louisiana, and then he was a senator, and he was promoting, in essence, the economic program that he would call National Socialism. Those things are exciting, or they're at least interesting. I mean, if you're not really a history buff, I guess they're not exciting, but it's like they're draining the blood out of history. They're taking the blood and removing. I mean, I'm about to say something that sounds kind of Nazi, I guess. They're taking the blood from the soil and making it infertile. They're turning it into sand where nothing will grow.
Well,
is that an appropriate analysis of what they're doing? I mean, they're taking away these Richmond. The most famous thing that ever happened in Richmond was being the capital of the Confederate States of America. I mean, well, okay, maybe you'd say that's one of the two famous things. The other famous thing was that it was one of the centers of the American Revolution. It's where Patrick Henry gave his "Give me liberty or give me death" speech in St. John's Cathedral.
Yeah, well, it doesn't just stop with the Confederacy. Also the founding fathers are being removed as well. But the problem that we have today is that, I guess, the next generation coming up, they have these really cool devices, these cell phones that, within a moment's notice. I mean, how we actually had to, pick up a book or read. I'm not really that old, but pick up a book or even like go to a computer and, have to research it. But now you have it at your fingertips, if it be an iPad or a cell phone. And instead of actually researching the history, they just go to somewhere else, some other crazy website or someone else's opinion, basically. And that's what they pretty much have their conception, all their facts based on someone else's opinion. And it's just like General Lee, everybody, the only way that they remember General Lee was, well, he was the Confederate general, but nobody really talks about what he did before he was in the Confederacy. He basically, he was as he said, he was a Virginian, before he was an American. And, we were statesmen before we were Americans. And his home country, basically Virginia, we don't turn against our people. And that's what he did. He refused to draw down on the citizens of Virginia. And that's why he served us. But, you think about all the other wars, he was once in the Blue Coat at one time, and nobody ever talks about that. And he was actually asked to lead the Union Army. But again, he would not draw down on his own fellow Virginians. But, just like, what is it? Beauregard in, New Orleans. What did he do, before he was a general? What did he do after he was a general? New Orleans would certainly not be what it is today if it wasn't for Beauregard. And a lot of the Black citizens of New Orleans were actually benefited from Beauregard. But when they were taking down that monument, the only thing that they seen was, well, this was a Confederate general. This was someone that we have, that is enemy. So what do you have there?
Well, I thought that, you were talking about Lee and, his status. And I just found this the other day. I'm not even sure how it came up, but this is, Franklin D. Roosevelt is generally considered the founder of the modern social welfare state. The greatest four-term Democratic president who instituted Social Security and made the United States in essence what it is today. He depended. Now, one thing, little background here. He totally depended on the Solid South voting Democrat, because back in those days, the Democratic Party was still the party of the South, the party of the red rooster that held the banner, white supremacy for the right. And so he needed the people of Texas. But these were his remarks at the unveiling of the Robert E. Lee Memorial that just got taken down, 1936. I am very happy to take part in this unveiling of the statue of General Robert E. Lee. All over the United States, we recognize him as a great leader of men, as a great general, but also all over the United States, we recognize him as something much more important than that. We recognize Robert E. Lee as one of our greatest American Christians and one of our greatest American gentlemen. And this is basically, the man who made Obama possible. Isn't that interesting? It's a straight line from Franklin D. Roosevelt to Obama and now Biden, but through LBJ, of course, who's over here. But in the 1930s, the South was a key part of the New Deal coalition. One of the biggest promoters was Mississippi Senator Theodore Bilbo, and he's largely often considered one of the greatest American racists of all time. Do you know about Theodore Bilbo?
No.
You should look him up. He's an amazing character. He was a very staunch white supremacist, and yet he was one of Roosevelt's biggest supporters. And of course, he was there that day in Dallas too. And we have become unimportant. I think that's really the most interesting thing. We are not. We have abdicated our role and our power in American politics, and all of this is about making sure that we continue to do that, because in that we have to hide our magazines under opaque coverings as if they were pornography. That's so offensive. I mean, my God, That's a building with columns that probably dates from the 1930s.
I mean, my friend talks about this all the time. And, the Virginia flaggers, that they, are doing a good deed when they go out here and they raise flags and flag poles to our fallen. Of course, when our monuments are falling left and right, and the UDC stands on their hands and they do absolutely nothing, and the SCV, I mean, yeah, they're putting up monuments every once in a while, but the thing is, where are the monuments that was already erected? Why are they sitting in a sewage place in Richmond, Virginia? I don't even know where General Lee is down in New Orleans, but
storage.
Storage.
He's in unclimate controlled storage.
So why are we not trying to get these monuments on private property? There's citizens all over the southern states that would love to take these monuments and put them up on private property. And then, the paperwork obviously doesn't matter, but we have learned, never donate any piece of parcel to the government for any reason, because obviously they will stab you in the back, just like the General Lee here in Richmond, Virginia. That particular piece of property was donated to the city, but it also has stipulations that said that they must
be in perpetuity, right? It was donated in to be maintained in perpetuity, right?
Right. And so they pretty much went against a dead man's wishes, I don't see how in the world. It's like, like we were talking about last week, where the law only stands for people like you and me. We are not given the same equal protections. They can break the law because of who they are, left and right. And it will come a day that they will say, hey, these Confederate flags on these private properties and stuff like that, we're going to put in this ordinance that says you can't have a flag of certain size, or some stupid really odd ideology. But I mean, I see it in the near future. I mean, them completely erasing us, and it makes me sick to see old Ralph Northam. He goes in there on his little thing on the news a couple days ago, and in the background you can just see it's all staged. He has this picture of 50 or 60 black kids, and they're all surrounding him, and his little white face sticking up in the middle of all those black kids. Obviously, like I said, it was staged. That picture was not there as a permanent fixture. But then he will turn around and take our history away and then replace it. I mean, I was looking at his Facebook page, and it just shows the multiple things that he's done for, black this and black that, and tribal this, and and then he was bragging about taking the monuments down in Richmond. And it was so funny. I was looking at the comments, every single one of them, they were just tearing his tail up on Facebook, complaining about it. But again, when he talks about General Lee, he called the Confederacy a, quote, insurrection. And it seems to be the word insurrection is a common word used by the Democrats these days. So, just like I said with General Lee, what did he do? In his past, you think about how he served the U.S., the Union at one time, and how when he was actually married, his slaves, he did not want them. He actually freed them. And so the only slaves that he had was from his wife. So, but yeah, I mean, it was an institution that was going away. And, just Jessica, how they can.
Jessica, that is something that I will not tolerate. The institution of slavery was not going away. The South was booming in the 1850s. The South was growing in the 1850s. the South, I mean, here in New Orleans, you can see the architectural explosion of very fine homes. And in Galveston, Texas, too, basically most of what we see from the Old South in terms of plantation homes is from the post-Mexican War period, the annexation of Texas. I mean, we want history to be accurate, and it is not true that slavery was on the way out. I mean, I happen to, think that we shouldn't go around apologizing for slavery all that much, because Thomas Jefferson wrote a very interesting essay in his time. I believe it was in the 1790s, actually, when he was Secretary of State for George Washington, in which he compared the lives and working conditions of slaves with New England fishermen and with northern factory workers, and then with European factory workers, because he spent time in France, of course, negotiating French support. So he knew about other conditions, and he basically concluded that the worst lives of any of those groups were the New England fishermen, that they had to work hardest and they got the least for it, that they were really much more oppressed than the Southern slaves. And all throughout the early 19th century, I mean, Southerners did make the comparison between Southern slavery and Northern and English and French and German industrialism. And I think we need to keep that in a very clear view here, because the Southern system was really doing well. And, I don't know, do you know the work of the Kennedy brothers, Don and Ron Kennedy?
No.
They're from Louisiana. You've never seen the book The South Was Right?
Yeah. I know who that is. Yeah.
That's Donald and Ronald Kennedy, and they're both Louisiana boys. And anyhow, they argue very forcefully that it was Northern envy of the Southern wealth. I mean, the cities of New Orleans and Natchez and Vicksburg were really fairly small compared to Northern cities, but they had much higher numbers per capita of millionaires. I mean, New Orleans is actually a small city, and Natchez was even smaller, and yet the magnificence of the homes that were built largely in the 1840s and 50s. Our economy was booming. It was not going away, and I think Southern nationalists and Southern patriots should not be saying a falsehood that slavery was on its way out, because it was booming. The whole economy was booming.
Well, I wonder how much of that was perpetuated by the Jews, the Jewish influence down there too, because the mass majority of the rich, the wealth was perpetuated by the Jewish influence. And even in the North.
There's certainly a lot of controversy about that. Again, here in New Orleans, we have the Touro Synagogue, founded by Josiah Touro, and there's a Touro hospital, and the name Touro was very big. And the Touros came to Louisiana from Rhode Island. And in Rhode Island, they had made this immense fortune, New England seafarers, primarily in the slave trade. And they were instrumental in building the city of New Orleans as it exists today. But they did totally support the institution of slavery. And again, I mean, I don't know that that's something that we should be exactly indicting them for, because it was a successful system. Now, one of the big questions in Confederate history, I think, is Judah P. Benjamin. And I have heard a conspiracy theory that Judah P. Benjamin was like a Rothschild plant in the South, and that he was under orders to help foment disunion and secession in order to further Rothschild interests. It doesn't make any sense to me. I don't really see the practicality of it. Judah P. Benjamin was the only Confederate leader. He held 3 cabinet positions during the Confederacy. He was first Attorney General of the Confederacy, and then he was Secretary of War, and finally he was the last Secretary of State. And there's a Benjamin Street over by Audubon Park named after him. And I mean, it's very confusing because I was having an argument with somebody on Facebook just the other day about Calhoun. Now, what's your impression of Calhoun?
Actually related to him. So.
You're related to him? My God, that's quite a relation to have. So, well, tell me what you think of your uncle or whatever he was.
I mean, I think he was real well revered. I mean, but again, it's just the thing about slavery. So, you know, I found this thing that that was given to me, and you know, something that's very important that nobody talks about. Everybody denies constantly. And anyway, it talks about the first slaves shipped to the American colonies in 1619 were 100.
Nobody talks about that. There's a project at the New York Times called the 1619 Project. Everybody talks about it. Go on.
Yes. So there were 100 white children from Ireland. The first slaves imported into American colonies were 100 white children in 1619, 4 months before the arrival of the first shipment of black slaves. Many were brought from Ireland, where the law held that it was no more sin to kill an Irishman than a dog or any other brute. King James II, followed by Charles I and Oliver Cromwell, sold over 500,000 Irish Catholics into slavery throughout the 1600s onto plantations in the West Indies islands of Antigua, whatever.
Antigua. Huh?
Yeah, and Jamaica, Barbados, as well as Virginia and the New England. Irish slaves were less expensive than Africans and treated with more cruelty and death. In the 17th century, from 1600 to 1699, there were more Irish sold as slaves than Africans. There are records of Irish slaves well into the 18th century. Many never made it off the ships, according to written record. In at least one incident, 132 slaves, men, women, and children, were dumped overboard to drown because the ship's supplies were running low. They were drowned because the insurance would pay for an accident, but not if the slaves were allowed to starve. White slavery, history denied, covered up, and marginalized. But it's funny, again, how everybody forgets about these slaves. It's all about the black ones. So if we're going to talk about the institution of slavery, then what about these slaves right here? You know, this is, you know, I have records of my family who did come from Ireland, and they came straight into servitude to pay.
Well, servitude is just not, I mean, as a lawyer, I have to say that, you know, indentured servitude is not the same as slavery. It just isn't. Indentured servitude. Huh?
Wrong terminology, but whatever it may be, you know, the fact that you know, they had to pay their way basically.
Sure. No, absolutely no. indentured servitude. I mean, it's that institution survived into the 20th century in the form of sharecropping. Sharecroppers were essentially indentured servants, right? You know, they worked the land and they had to pay the lot. They got to keep some of the crops they produced or the cotton they produced, but not all. And I mean, you know, the weird thing about it is if you start really studying it, all these lines get blurred because even a lot of the black slaves were permitted to produce some products for their own cash use and to have a little bit of money, maybe not much, maybe only as much as the master would allow. But how different is that really from indentured servitude or sharecropping, which applied to white people? And for that matter, how different is it really if you're producing $100 product for a manufacturer and you're only getting $1 for it in salary? Is that really all that different from slavery? Because I mean, if I own a slave, I've invested something in that slave, and I have to keep that slave alive. But if I'm paying you $1 a day or $1 a week, it might have been in the 19th century. If I'm paying you $1 a day or $1 a week, because of the nature of salary, that's all you get. I don't owe you anything. If you drop dead, that's not my problem, right? I mean, so this is why the comparisons of free labor and slavery are kind of disingenuous. Because the free labor of the North and England, and I mean, you've read Charles Dickens, haven't you?
Yeah.
Have you read Les Miserables of Victor Hugo?
Say that again.
Have you read Les Miserables by Victor Hugo? Les Miserables. You haven't. Okay. Those Dickens and Victor Hugo describe in detail the horrible life that free white people were living in Europe at the same time as antebellum slavery was reaching its apogee in the 1850s. And basically, I think very objectively, the slaves in the South had it much better. I mean, you need to read especially Victor Hugo's Les Miserables. There's a girl in there called Fantine. And I mean, she ends up selling her hair and her teeth out of her mouth to keep her daughter alive. And this is the story of a white French girl who had been beautiful and basically was abused and thrown away by society. And you know, I read that book when I was a kid, maybe when I was 10 or 11, and it still affects me to this day how awful that life was. And strangely enough, you hear a few stories about brutal abuse of slaves, but really on the whole, you know, the number of slaves that was imported to the United States was something like 500,000. And by the time of the war between the states, there were 4 million. That wasn't exactly genocide, was it?
Yeah, and I mean, you think about it too, where you have the blacks that came into America or whatever. It's no different than welfare, basically. You know, they didn't have welfare back then, so how are they able to take care of themselves? How are they able to feed themselves? And to beat your slave is like beating a dent in the side of your Ferrari, you know what I mean, at that point, because certainly they were so expensive, and you know, you would take a lot of care to make sure their health was good and stuff like that. And like you said, with the Irish, you know, they were free late. Well, I mean, with like the $1 a day, they could just send them back, and if they died, then oh well, they would be replaced. But a lot of that stuff is not put out there plainly. You know, certainly the welfare system of today is a basic remnant of slavery. Because, I mean, you think about it, you keep a black person suppressed, basically you give them free home and free food and free place to sell their drugs. I mean, get their nice cars and, make their extra money and do their didn't do nothing crimes and stuff like that. But, if they have all this stuff already, then they have no reason to succeed. They have no reason to go beyond what they are today. And unlike the blacks, the Irish, they actually got up and when they freedom, they were actually out there and they made their lives. They went and got their homes, and they didn't sit around and cry and complain about how they were so treated so badly and everything else. I know that my particular ancestor was, the first settler of the particular county that he was from, and he fought off the Indians, and then his son served in the American Revolutionary War. So again, he didn't sit around and cry and grief himself and blame everybody.
In all fairness, I mean, during the much hated and reviled Jim Crow era, a lot of blacks did the same thing. In all fairness, here in New Orleans, it was a very strange society, but basically there would be one street that, measuring the streets that go perpendicular to the Mississippi River, not the parallel streets that connect, that go parallel to the Mississippi River, but the streets that go perpendicular to the Mississippi River. There'd be one street that was white, big fancy houses, and then the next street would be much smaller, either shotguns or single room houses, and those would be the blacks who worked in the white houses or businesses on the fancy streets. And the whole city was that kind of patchwork. But the interesting thing is, one of the most interesting things that ever happened to me was once on a trip to New York. I don't know if I've told you this story or not, but this is in 2014, actually. I was visiting New York City, and I happened to meet this guy named Jerron Ames. And Jerron Ames was a black jazz pianist, black jazz piano musician and saxophonist. Wonderful, absolutely wonderful musician. I mean, part of what made New Orleans famous, people like him. But he was living in New York, and his apartment, large condo on the Upper East Side, was just spectacular. He had decorated it to look like a New Orleans house. And it was just like a perfect replica of New Orleans style interior decorating. And so I asked him, "What are you doing? I mean, if you obviously love New Orleans. I mean, you've recreated it here. So why are you living here? Why are you living in New York?" And he said a few things about how he could make more money as a jazz musician in New York. But then he said, "And I can never go back to New Orleans." Why not? Because, well, my family lost everything there. How did they lose everything? One word. You might be surprised. That one word that destroyed my family was integration. We ran the largest black bank in the state of Louisiana, and when they brought in integration, they destroyed us. We sold to black people. We made loans to black people on black houses, and we helped black people become homeowners. But guess what three-letter ethnic group said that it was an illegal bank and it should be outlawed because it wasn't in conformity with Federal Reserve policies.
Imagine that.
They were making hard money loans to Black people, and Black people were paying back in hard money. They were not creating credit. They were actually doing sound economy all the way up through the 1960s. And that was his family. I had no inkling this was going on when I was an undergraduate in the 1970s here, but in the 1970s, they smashed all the Black neighborhoods and all the Black banks and all the financing. And those efforts that Black people were making to better themselves, like the Irish that you're talking about, like the Italians, like the Jews for that matter, were totally destroyed and undone by the international bankers. So, understanding history is a very interesting thing. And that side of history and that side of the civil rights movement has been completely obliterated. That basically there was an economy. I guess it was just not good enough, right? For the international bankers. And I brought this page up, the value of slaves. And slaves were a very substantial investment. This chart estimated that in 1850, the current dollar value of slaves would be between 14,000 and 240. A lot of money.
So why would you beat your slave up if it's worth that much? I think all of that stuff, it's a lie to try to grip the hearts of these Blacks that think that we were so mean to them and stuff like that, and that we're blamed for their entire failure to society. But like you were saying, the three-letter words, the higher institutions, they basically stifled the growth of the Blacks. If that's so, then, and then like you said, the history being stifled itself. They don't want that stuff to get out because, then it wouldn't be the white man's fault all the time that they go them. It would be the famous three-letter word. They would come to grips in reality on, the famous three-letter word and their whole, roles that they had in slavery, and how they, like I said, kept them down or whatever. So that's very interesting.
Going back to your, what's your relation to Calhoun? Because that's quite a distinguished southern relation to have.
Yeah, well, see, I'm a descendant of the Hatfields. They're my first cousins, 3 times removed or whatever.
As in the Hatfields and McCoys. As in the famous feuding Hatfields and McCoys.
Yeah, that's the one. That's the yeah.
This
so from West
Virginia, we're living, got us feuding like the Hatfields and McCoys. Okay.
So anyway, I followed my genealogy extensively, and so it leads back to there. And then, of course, my grandfather, which was a well-decorated general for the Hatfields, and that was their grandfather too. So it's pretty interesting. But anyway, it leads into another part of my family, and then that ultimately leads into the Calhoun. So, and then of course he comes up as a cousin. But it's very interesting. I have another friend who's actually a Calhoun as well, and it's just, it's such a distinct bloodline, being part of that. But yeah, it's funny how whenever these people, like I said with General Lee and, Beauregard go back to Beauregard, because what did he do? Pull it up on the screen. What did he do for New Orleans, and what did he do for the people of New Orleans and even the black population? And what did Calhoun do?
Beauregard was he was a promoter of black equality and black votes.
He also did the levee system there too.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's interesting. The very first levees on the Mississippi River, though, were up in St. Louis, and you know who built those?
Beauregard.
No. Beauregard was a young man, younger than that. No, the first levees on anywhere on the Mississippi River were built up by St. Louis by Major Robert E. Lee.
But like I said, if it wasn't for these generals that they have demonized so much, I mean, just think of all their contributions, and even Calhoun, just all the contributions that they had given. And I mean, they're up there taking down Thomas Jefferson because he owned a slave.
Well, they took him down in New York, didn't they?
Yeah.
He was in the New York City Hall, and he had been there since like in the 1830s, I believe. His statue had been there since the 1830s.
I mean, it's embarrassing. That I know that they took General Lee out of the Capitol, that he represented Virginia. And I mean, General Lee, I mean, he was a Virginian. He represents us more than anybody. And so now they have this black school teacher that is up there now. That is not who we are. I just don't understand it, how these white guilt people just don't fight.
Well, I mean, that gets back to the purpose of erasing history. The purpose of erasing history, I think, is to erase the people who created it, the people who are the focus of history. You want it's that some people might call it a psyop, a psychological operation to make white people want to vanish. And I don't know how many people who feel this way, but I know a surprising number of white people who think that the world would be better without white people.
I know, and then the ones that laugh when they say that the population is downgrading, they're so proud of that. And then, you think about it, all the contributions that white people have given. I mean, why do you think that America, it was made so great? It wasn't, anyone else's contributions that did it, obviously.
Oh, I mean, again, let's be real fair. It was white architects and white engineers and black manual labor that built New Orleans. I mean, okay, there was a lot of Irish here too. But I mean, in large part, the monuments, this house, the Van Benthuizen house, the church I go to, Trinity Church, New Orleans, I'm sure, I don't know that they even have the records of who built Trinity Church in the 1840s and 50s. Or who exactly built the Van Benthuizen house. But up to a point, when you're attacking this heritage, you're actually tearing down the work that, even if they weren't the architects and they weren't the engineers, it was black labor that either built it all or contributed very heavily to it. And so, are you really honoring the memory of black slaves by tearing down everything that they built? I mean, it's all a matter of how you frame things. And New Orleans was designed by white people, but up to a point, it was definitely built by black people. And so, why is it advantageous to teach black people that basically they had no stake in? Because they did. and at every stage they did. And I think that basically, if presented properly, there does not have to be this division in society, except to the degree that we want to preserve our genetic heritage. Why you got called a white devil in school and all that. But other than that, we have worked together for almost 400 years, ever since that vote in 1619. And I was reading, a little bit of the history of early Virginia. And are you familiar with the Polish laborers who were imported in 17th century Virginia?
Nah.
Now that's an interesting story. They apparently organized the first labor strike in the United States history.
Well, I mean, so the question that I ask, as far as the legal standpoint of all of this, with the taking of the monuments, I know that a lot of the states, I think, I know Virginia had it and then North Carolina had it. And then I think Alabama has one too. But and it might even be Mississippi as well. But a lot of the states have a protection. And I know that the UDC is dead. Might as well say they're pretty much just taking money at this point, which is very disheartening given the fact that the lineage of fighters that came from the UDC, the ladies who went to the battlefields and they saved the bodies, they dug up the bodies, they put names to the bodies, they recovered as many as they could, and then the ones that they were not able to recover, they built these beautiful memorials to our dead, the lasting headstones, the only memorials that our people got for the ones who were left on the battlefields. And so when these people of today, these if you want to call them UDC advocates, they're pretty much just like a cosplay at this time. Or
like what?
They're just what do they call it? LARPers. That's what I was looking for. LARPers. They want to run around their little dresses on.
That's a younger term. I don't know what LARPing means. What does LARPing mean?
So they're most of the UDC members now, they just have their little dresses on and their little fritzy little hats on, and they go to their little black veil things and stuff like that. But as far as fighting for these memorials, they are not doing so. They're just letting them come down. And, there's all these state laws. Yeah, they go in there and they pick the shittiest attorneys they can find, of course, that doesn't do anything as far as fighting for these monuments. But what do we do? How can we fight this from now on, all the monuments that still exist with these memorials? I know specifically North Carolina, the one that was in Pittsburgh, specifically the one that got me arrested. I should have that one. It should be on my front lawn. But anyway, I'm sure
they'd sell it to you at interest.
What?
I'm sure they'd sell it to you at interest.
Oh no, they should just give it to me. It should be sitting in my front yard right now. But anyway, with that being said, the law states, and I mean, I don't have it right in front of me, but anyway, I know when I went to a town council meeting about the monument in Reidsville, North Carolina, or Caswell County. I have ancestors that fought for Caswell County as well, so it's a very particular interest to me. And
you almost have the entire Confederacy running in your blood if you're related to Calhoun and the Hatfields and all these. That's amazing.
Hey, I am very proud of my lineage. I have no white guilt whatsoever. But anyway, I digress. So the way the law reads, that it was brought out in that town council meeting, that they cannot remove these monuments. And if they did remove them, it has to be for an improvement on the parking lot or change in the traffic situation. And if they do remove them from that particular locality, it has to go, or location, it has to go to another location that is just as prominent, and that it must be able to receive the same visibility as the place it was at first. And so I know that there was this, the main guy, the chairman or whatever, he was the black councilman. He was up there and he was just determined he was going to take this memorial down at all cost. And so they got their attorney in there. And the attorney said, well, we can't remove this monument because the law, the preservation law that North Carolina has. And so we're not turning it into a parking lot. We can't just take it out and put something else in its place because the law prevents us from doing that. So we must, if we're going to take it from this location, we're going to have to take and rip that whole section out in the center of town, which it has all these trees and these bushes and flowers and, really nice little setup there. But the thing is, there's also other war memorials that were there as well. They had one to the Vietnam veterans and the World War I and World War II. But they obviously, this black councilman, he has no consideration for the military whatsoever, obviously. And he was willing just to uproot this one Confederate monument to the Confederate dead, obviously the people of the past in this town well before he existed. They were going to up this statue, and then they're going to take the other ones up too, because just to get rid of this one Confederate memorial. And so they were not able to remove it at that point. And the lawyer, he was trying to figure out ways to go around it, manipulate it in order to defeat it. Well, in Pittsburgh, they took the monument down saying that it was a safety hazard. It had been up for over 100 and some years. I'm not really sure exactly how many years. I think it was it was over 100 years. And anyway, all of a sudden, now out of the blue, that some person of persuasion was complaining that it offended them when they drove around the circle, that they happened to look left and see this Confederate soldier holding a rifle with a slouch hat, but it offended him so severely. And so when they decided to take it down, they're not turning it into a parking lot. And so basically, essentially for an entire year, they had actually just literally broke the state law. And so in order to backtrack and to cover themselves, Heine's first, they actually went in and changed the circle in the middle of town. They expanded it and put a larger sidewalk in there just so that they would never have to put that monument back up. But because of the way the law was written, they are still breaking the law because it is in storage right now and it's obviously not getting the visibility that it did before they took it down. So moving forward, what can we do as Southerners? The legal framework of it.
It's very simple. You have to take power again. You have to enter politics and you have to take power again, because that's the only way anything will ever change. None of the legal problems that you're having in either state would happen if you were as, say, powerful as Calhoun or the Hatfields. And so, I mean, that's not that is it true or false? Am I making it up? Would they do this to John Caldwell Calhoun? No, they wouldn't. They would name a college at Yale. They would name one of the colleges at Yale University after him, and then it would be changed a couple of years ago. But did you know that Yale had a Calhoun College?
No.
Until a couple of years ago, one of the oldest colleges, they call them colleges at Yale, they call them houses at Harvard, but they're like the subunits of the university. And there was a Calhoun College at Yale that was an undergraduate, part of the undergraduate education program there. And they changed that name. But I mean, that was a powerful, powerful, powerful man, vice president of the United States under Andrew Jackson. And this was the argument I was having with somebody about whether he really supported the Bank of America, not Bank of America, Bank of the United States or not. But we'll do that another time. But it's just amazing. I mean, you, Jessica, it's in your hands. You are going to have to run for office. You are going to have to reverse the power.
Yeah, okay, I can see that now. Yeah, I can see that now. The racist bigot, white devil, is running for office. But
I can see the posters. Put them along the highway with the Confederate flag. The white devil has returned.
Oh my!
You think you wouldn't get press coverage?
Oh, I mean, certainly. I mean, every minute of every day. I mean, you think the obsession is bad now. You just wait till that. But yeah, I was looking at the UDC book here, and it's kind of funny. It's kind of ironic how I don't know if you can see this, but you see this memorial here. This is actually the one in Dallas.
Yes.
That one. So it's funny. They were actually talking about this memorial, and it was taken down. Let's see. It says, okay, so it was erected in June the 12th, 1936, during the Jim Crow.
That's the speech by Franklin D. Roosevelt I was reading from June 12th, 1936.
So it says, yes, it has it on here. I just realized that. But see, okay, so it was by the Dallas Southern Memorial Association to honor all Confederate veterans, unveiled by President Franklin D. Roosevelt. He said, "I am very happy to take part in the unveiling of the statue of General Lee." So the one that you said, and then it says, so in 2015, when the church shooting happened, the little didn't do nothings vandalized the monument, and in 2017 they took it down. Well, then it was auctioned by the city of Dallas for a whopping $1.5 million. Then the irony of this is it got reinstalled at La Hitas Resort of Telingua, Texas, near Big Bend National Park.
Oh, I think that you know why that's in Jefferson Davis Parish, Jefferson Davis County, I believe, Jeff Davis County.
It safely resides within the site of the Rio Grande and the border with Mexico, where a young engineer and West Point graduate demonstrated to all concerned that Captain Robert E. Lee was an extraordinary soldier. So I think that is a proof right there that we can put these memorials on property and keep these monuments out there.
But that's they paid $1.5 million for it, and they put it in the middle of nowhere. You know,
it's still up. It doesn't matter if it's in the middle of nowhere. It is up. It is visible to the public if they want to see it. They and
basically it was okay. The difference is
very key.
Lee Park was in the heart of Dallas.
I know.
The dead heart of Dallas. I mean, right here in the city, and that site described is probably about 300 miles from the nearest interstate highway. And the nearest interstate highway is going to be Interstate 10 going to El Paso, and by the Rio Grande. I mean, it isn't a county with a good name, but it's just way. I mean, basically, you'd have to make a special pilgrimage to see that.
That is fine, because instead of these memorials going into storage buildings and at sewage facilities, they are out there and they are back up. That's what I wanted to see. If I don't, I mean, I would even donate my land to put property, or deed it out to where nobody would get a hold to it, and put these on my property. I mean, that's just.
I think that would be awesome. But here in New Orleans, we're just less than an hour away from Jefferson Davis's last home, and that's a dedicated permanent monument. But
they've been trying to take that down too. So, I mean, when they go in up here into Lexington, Virginia, where General Lee is buried and General Jackson is buried, and they go in there and they take his name off the buildings, and then they're talking about taking the memorial off of the grave of Jackson. I mean, these people are of the demons, they're of Satan, because, they have no morals anymore.
Well, I mean, let's think about another time in history. And we're going to have to wrap this up soon because we've been going for 2 hours and this is getting to be a very long video. But
you're not supposed to go over an hour, remember?
It's been 2 hours. But anyhow, let's think about, I've been reading, I don't know where it is right now, but I've got a book that I've been, I know where it is now. Give me a second, just a second.
Stay tuned, little kitties.
What?
He's going to go swim in his ocean right now with his fish.
Okay. I found it. I've been reading this book, and it's strangely relevant. Let's see. Can you see this?
Not yet. Nope. All I can see is I can't see. Okay, stick it back up there again. Yeah. I can see it. Now you disappeared. You're too close. All right. Yeah, I seen it.
I need to get this green screen working a little bit better. Anyhow, it's called The Christians as the Romans Saw Them by Robert Louis Wilkin. And, it's one of the most interesting descriptions I've ever seen because it's description of early Christianity as the Romans perceived them. And oddly enough, and Greeks, Romans and Greeks perceived them actually. And here's what's weird. They were the Romans and Greeks of the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th centuries and 5th centuries were going through exactly what we're going through right now. They were being obliterated by this new heretical. It's an interesting thing because they all of their heritage was being wiped out. And I think somebody doesn't like what I'm saying because I just got a message that my internet connection was unstable. So
there's actually people watching.
We may have to give up in a minute or two. But anyhow, the point was that Christianity had as its ambition to wipe out the old religion and the old gods and the old heroes. And it was a terrible loss to the entire world that the Christians wiped out so much of ancient Rome and ancient Greece. They destroyed so many texts that we wish we had right now. And they did this all over the Mediterranean. And I think that we're going through a very similar thing right now, except that it's communism, socialism and communism doing it to us. It's like history is coming full circle, and we are the Romans and Greeks, and the communists and socialists are here destroying us. And my bottom line on the real meaning of the removal of the monuments is and always has been that this is a case of genocide, that the purpose is to wipe out white America and the white American people. And, that is going to be a disaster even worse than the destruction of the Roman Empire, I think. What's the period of after the destruction of the Roman Empire called? It's called the Dark Ages, because all civilization had to go through basically a 500-year rebirth. And ironically, if you study this history, it becomes so interesting, because it was really close to 600 years between the fall of Rome and the real beginnings of resurgence in Europe, which was brought on by the Crusades. Organizing for the Crusades, declaring war on Islam, defending Europe from the Muslims. That was what caused the rebirth of Europe after, but it took 600 years. Are we about to go through something like that now? I mean, I think it's very possible that we are.
I think so too. It's definitely a genocide, and then you have all these white people that have their heads in the sand, and they have that mentality, just like the gun owners last week. They have this mentality, well, it's not affecting me directly, so what do I care? And that's where we are today. If we don't start waking up the normies, we're going to be this extinct race. I mean, they're mudding down the waters pretty much, and I can see it now. The United States will be nothing but mongoloids at this point. All the mixed. There will be even Europe at this point. There will not be a white race if we don't wake up. So
Tim Griffith is definitely working on it, isn't he?
Huh?
I said Tim Griffith is definitely doing his part to achieve that end, isn't he?
Oh God, don't get him started.
Oh dear.
No, it's more than him. It's really disgusting. But everything on the TVs, every commercial, every program, it's anti-white agenda. It's okay to mix breed with these
the hell with it being okay.
Blacks and whites.
The hell with it being okay. It's the best thing in the world. It's what advertised on almost every page of every magazine you pick up, and all over the internet. And
be some faggot, be some nasty homosexual. And it's funny. I was seeing today where they had this swimmer from the women's swimming team, and he now is prescribing himself as female and self-identifies as female, and then he's out there just dominating the sport. Huh?
Is this Nancy something? I can't remember. I was reading something about her today.
Yeah, him. It's a him. He's got nuts and all, but but the thing is, when he self-identifies as a woman and is out there dominating the sport, all these feminists and liberals, their whole agenda is backfiring on them. It's kind of funny. But yeah, everything is just so backwards. Everything is right is wrong and wrong is right. So all I can say is the go him no.
Do what?
I said the go him no.
I don't. The what?
The go him. The goy. Never mind.
How do you spell it?
I'll explain it to you later.
Spell it. What are you saying?
The goyim. What they call us?
Oh, Goyim. Goyim. You were saying Gom. You you can't speak Hebrew with a southern accent.
My accent's different than yours.
Goyim.
But anyway, yeah. So, all right. Well, you better go ahead and close it up.
Anyhow, you need to think about running for office to stop genocide.
Yeah, okay. I have office.
Huh?
I am in an office position, and you see how much crap it got me into?
Well, no, that was all just by being an amateur. You need to dedicate yourself full time
Step
to.
up the game. What the hell was I thinking?
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, you've got the knowledge. You've got this amazing family background. I mean, I've never heard of anybody related to as many famous people as you are. That's kind of amazing.
Yeah, I have General Washington on my mom's side too. So what can I say? So
we may be related. It's kind of weird, but okay.
It's that good Virginia blood right there. You know, that good DNA. We were all fighters. We were not little pansy asses. And we died for what we believed in.
Anyhow, it's Sunday, 7:11 Central Time. It must be 8:11 Eastern Time. It is the Feast of Stephen, and we've been talking about genocide and that the only solution is political. And the next thing we've got to work on is Jessica has to get some freedom of information requests, but we're going to do that in another podcast. So good night from New Orleans and somewhere in the territory of the Hatfields and Calhouns of Virginia and the Carolinas.
That's right. Dividends. God bless Dixie.